You have kids?
I do. I got 3.
3? Oh my God. I thought I had
Yeah.
a handful with 2, dude. Jeez. Good
So
Lord.
I understand the circus.
God bless you. All right, man. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Let's do it. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome to the show. I am super stoked to have you. Have you picked up your copy of Beyond UX Design, Master Your Craft Beyond Pixels and Prototypes yet? Unlock the secrets of UX success and learn all the things they didn't teach you in school. Listen until the end for an exclusive discount. Get 10% off your copy. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/book to learn more. This week's episode is brought to you by Wix Studio, career shifters, people building portfolios and case studies, web designers. This one is for you. I've only got 1 minute to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises. So here are a few things that you can do from start to finish in 1 minute or less on Studio. You can adapt your designs for every device with responsive AI. You can reuse assets like templates, widgets, sections, and design libraries across all your sites and share them with your team. You can switch up the styling of hundreds of web pages. That means fonts, layouts, colors, all in a click. Add no-code animations and gradient backgrounds right in the editor. Export your designs from Figma to Wix Studio in just 1 click. I think that one's my favorite. Oh, and one more big one, package and deliver everything your client needs in one smooth handover. So time's up, but the list keeps going on. Step into Wix Studio and see for yourself. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/Wix to start creating today. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. If you are a regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That'll help me out so much more than you can imagine. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty for all their support. And if you want to join those fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get rough transcripts and exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. And you can get instant access to the video archives right now for as little as $5 a month. For more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing here, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then I would love it if you told some friends. So consultants. What does that word mean to you when you hear the word consultants? If you're anything like me, the first thing that you think about when you hear consultants is the Bobs from Office Space. But what about design consultants or software consultants? Do you know what they do? Are they just contractors? What's the difference? And often when we think about our career, full-time employment, sort of the first thing that comes to mind, salary, benefits, things like that. But there's another type of role, consultant, where you're an employee of one company, but you do work for another. It's a really interesting job. You can learn a lot as a consultant. So today I'm stoked to have Shahed Syed on the show. He's lead designer at Focus Labs, and he's going to drop some knowledge on what it means to be a consultant, and he's going to tell us why it's a good idea for you to consider this type of role. So I'm really excited to have Shahed on the show today. Shahed's an architect turned product designer. He has 12 years of experience solving problems across diverse mediums and industries, mostly in enterprise fintech. Shahed currently leads a design consulting practice at Focus Labs, where he creates collaborative environments where both consultants and clients feel inspired and empowered to contribute towards good and profitable user experiences. So Shahed, welcome to Beyond UX Design. I am so excited to have you on. How's it going, man?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. So I know I read a little bit of your bio there. Architect, you're actually, man, it's funny because I've interviewed already a few people who were architects turned UX designers. It's like a running theme, I feel like. But I'm curious, I read your bio there a minute, but I'm curious, how did you get into, from architecture into consulting specifically? I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, so I started as an architect, but I was always interested in the software space. So in high school and college, I used to create game mods, design websites, that kind of thing. So it was always kind of a hobby. And while I was working as an architect on one of my side projects, went viral and kind of blew up. So I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe there is something in this. Maybe I can turn this into like a full-time career. And that's how I got into my first UX gig was actually a consulting gig in the fintech industry. And that's kind of how I got into it.
So what was the side project? Was it like a game or something or product?
No, it was an infographics. I used to do data visualization, so I did an
Ah, okay.
infographic. Yeah, I did an infographic on the movie Inception, and it went viral. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the actor from that movie, he actually
Yeah.
retweeted. He retweeted that
No way. Yeah, right
infographic.
on.
So yeah, I was like, after it went viral, I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Maybe I should turn this into a full time thing. Like I had a moment where I had my LinkedIn had two different profiles. I was a construction manager and I was also a software designer. So I'm like, should I maintain two LinkedIn's or not?
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
So you said Inception, right? Did I hear you
Yes. Yep.
correctly?
Yep. Inception.
Okay, so question. At the end, is the top spinning or does it fall over? What do you think? What happens?
you know, I think it stops. Like that was my take.
Yeah, I kind of hope it does. No spoilers here. I guess if
Yeah.
anyone's seen it. I guess at this point though, that came out like what 20 years ago. If you haven't
Yeah.
seen it now, I think you've reached your statute of limitations on no spoilers. All right, so I want to talk about consulting today. So, like I said, when I hear the word consultants, I think of like something like the Bobs, where they come in and sort of, help people like kind of figure out what to do, and in the case of Office Space, they're obviously like telling people like, they're going to get laid off and stuff. But designers are obviously very different. I want to hear from you when you think about consultants. What is a consultant, and maybe how's it different from something like maybe a contractor or a freelancer, and even the difference between an individual contributor who might be a full-time employee?
So I think there's a lot of overlap between those roles. If you look at design consultants, the word design is still part of your title. So you're still a designer. So in terms of the kind of work that you do, you're still an expert in design. In terms of activities, like you do mostly the same things. The way a contractor and a consultant differ is a contractor is brought in to execute at a specific scope, right? You're coming in and you're given something like a problem to solve, and you're solving that problem within that scope. For a consultant, I would say you're going beyond just solving that problem, but also building that trust and an advisory relationship. So, what I see at consulting as is you're leaving the client in a better place. It's almost like teach a man to fish, right? So, you're coming in and you're leaving them in a better place so that they can repeat the process and the improvements that you've put in place to be able to continue that and keep improving themselves. So the goal, I think, for consultants is to deprecate themselves. Is that's how we operate. Like we go in, we want to basically fire ourselves. Like so, that's the mindset we go in with. We go in and we say, hey, you know what? You're at that point. You guys don't need us anymore. We're bouncing. Compare that to a staff hog, where the goal there is to extend the contract as long as possible, right? Just you make the client dependent on you, and you don't want to get out because the longer you stay there, the more money you make, right? So that's kind of the difference I see.
And it's cool, like as a consultant too, because this is sort of what I do for Edge Case for my company. We similar kind of thing. But what I love about it is you get as a designer, you're not stuck in one job for years and years and years. You get to kind of explore and poke around different industries and play around with different products and things like that. Where my last experience was full-time employee at a large global conglomerate, and I did that for like almost 8 years, working on almost the same thing. So not that either one is better than the other, but it's kind of interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about from your perspective, what is being a consultant like? When you come in, a lot of times, you might come in as the only designer that's working on a product. You might come in as supplementing it, others, or maybe even leading it. I'm curious, and maybe this might even be a hard thing to answer because it might be, it depends. But I'm curious, what is being a consultant like for those out there who might be listening that have no idea what consultants actually do? What is it like?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is when you first get on a project, it almost starts like you're starting a new job, right? You have new teammates, you have a new environment, new process, whatnot. So you're kind of getting familiar, but the difference here is that you need to be a lot more proactive because you're not just there to solve a design problem. You're also there to, like I said, upskill the client. So you're there as in this advisory role. So the way I see it is, the first thing is you have to hit the ground running. Like especially at consultants at Focus Labs, the way we go in is in the beginning, we're very tactical. Like we go in there, and if teams are stuck, or if there's politics, or there's red tape, or there's some things that are preventing them from producing and releasing features, like we want to get that one stuck, right? We want to deliver impact as fast as possible. So we actually run on weekly iterations. So our goal is to demo working software every week. So whether it's working software or research or designs, right? Like we step away from, the internal bureaucracy and like try to move past that and try to establish ourselves as change makers as fast as possible. So I think that is kind of the biggest difference when you first get into a consulting engagement. And the other part is to build trust and influence, right? So like it's funny because when consultants first appear on the scene, everyone's kind of wary. They're like, wait, who are these guys? You almost look like a threat because they're like, hey, is my job in danger? Like, am I in trouble? Like, with what's going to happen, right? So in addition to all of you wrapping up and delivering on all that, you're also building trust with the client teams and kind of showing them, hey, you know what? We're actually here to help everyone, not just ourselves, but like, we're all in this together. And then how do you build that trust? How do you build that influence in addition to what you're actually brought in for to deliver?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you mentioned that because it's funny. Like I said, I worked at this big giant conglomerate, and we would often hire companies like Deloitte, or somebody would come in and they would have all these ideas. And it's funny because the thing that I felt a lot, I felt threatened, like you kind of mentioned, because I'm like, I've been here forever. I know the problems that you have, and you hire this company, pay them millions of dollars, and you listen to them, and they have no idea about any of this stuff. Well, you're paying me, but you don't listen to me. You listen to them. So it's kind of interesting. I want to talk a little bit about that because this is sort of something where I feel like thinking about the sort of theme for this show, it's like, would you want to get into it? But also, a lot of designers are going to end up working with consultants. And I think it's interesting to kind of hear from a consultant's perspective, your view of that and how someone should feel about a consultant when they are hired and you feel threatened. So I'm curious, maybe both sides of that. Like, how would you handle that as a consultant? But then how should individual contributors feel and interact with you as a consultant to get the most, to get the best possible product in the end?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I'll give you my view from the consultant side. So when I go in, and I understand that threat, right? Like I understand that going in, going to start disrupting things, possibly. So the initial goal is to build that trust. So we go in there and say that, hey, you know what? We're actually all in this together, and then establishing that trust early is the most critical part of it. The way I see it is, software, like the problems that we work on for design or for software or whatnot, they're actually pretty easy. It's the people part that's the hardest, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So it's how do you bring people along with you is like the biggest challenge. And the way I see it as a consultant is I'm going in there with the intention and with the goal that all these people that I'm going to be interacting with are going to be in a much better place than when I leave them. And that's also the goal. Like it's us, the consultant has to go in there with the intention that, we're going to upskill them and then we're going to leave. That should be the goal. Maybe that's not communicated often, which is why there's that feeling of threat, or maybe it is like a staff log, which is why they might feel like, oh, these guys are going to be here, we're going to be taken out. But there's also that, like you mentioned, it's, hey, I've been here for years, like I know all this stuff, and you're bringing these consultants to kind of work on these problems. Like, what gives, right? So, how do you deal with that? Again, it all comes back to trust, and then building that trust.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. That's something like I think about all the time. Software, you write the code, it spits out exactly what you typed in. It's but it's pretty straightforward. I used to say easy, and I had developers friends who would get mad at me. Software's not easy. It's very straightforward. What makes software really hard is the people, the personalities, the processes, that we've built, that the people have built, and the red tape and the bureaucracy and all that stuff. I love that you mentioned that. So as a consultant, what I'm curious about is when you've dealt with a lot of these individual contributors, you've probably come across people who did feel threatened. I'm curious, what kind of things, challenges that consultants kind of have, and how do you work through that? Somebody gets a job as a consultant, they're going to run into these things. What advice would you have for somebody who runs into those things?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty fortunate with the types of people that I've dealt with are pretty open and collaborative. Like they might be a little, threatened. Like you could tell by their body language and with the way they approach you. They're like, okay, who is this guy? Like, why is he here? What's going on, right? The biggest thing that I've done personally is being vulnerable, right? Showing that, hey, I'm here on your side. So whether that means having initial conversations with them, pairing with them, like design pairing is huge. So you jump into them in Figma, you call them in a working session. He's like, hey, I'm working on this. What do you think of this design, right? or say just get their feedback. So you want them to have ownership in the work that you're doing. I think that's the most effective way I've seen in earning trust from other designers is to kind of bring them along in that process so that they have ownership of the design and it doesn't feel like, oh, this consultant did this thing by themselves, and it creates that animosity, and it's like the othering of the designer. It's like, hey, that's something the consultant did, and part of it also goes into not just for designers but also bringing the other disciplines along. So whether it's PMs, whether it's engineers, whether it's the users, other stakeholders, all of them should feel they've been part of that process. I'll give you an example. We were in this one project. This one company had consultants brought in before us, and what these consultants did was basically did a whole bunch of research and then created a whole bunch of screens. But the product that they delivered only met the needs of one of the teams of the company. And the product was basically a mess. Like it didn't work. There were 9 different teams, and the product only worked for one of the teams. So it's the other 8 teams were like, "This is useless. We can't use this, right?" So when we were brought in as consultants, the company obviously was extremely wary of our methods. It's like, hey, we've already done these interviews. We've already gone through this process. We've already gone through all of this, right? It's like, why should we go through that same design process again? What is different about you? So we had to first earn the trust that we can actually deliver, and we're going to be collaborative, and we're going to bring you along the process. And we had to deliver consistently, pretty fast, because the other thing that the other consulting firm did, they worked in a waterfall fashion. They did all the interviews and then delivered screens at the very end, right? So we kind of showed them sketches. We showed them extremely rough prototypes, extremely rough mockups, because they saw the process, they saw the roughness, they saw like the iteration. They were kind of brought in that process. So that trust took a long time to build because the other consulting company eroded that trust. So we had to start from not from a baseline, but almost from a negative, right? We had to build from a negative to a baseline and then to a point of trust. It takes forever to build trust, but it takes a second to destroy it all. So it's keeping that in mind as a consultant. That's I think is pretty critical.
Bring up a really great point too. That you're not the first consultant that a lot of these companies have hired. Right. Your company is probably fixing something that someone else broke or fixing something that broke somewhere else. And so if they've had a bad experience with consultants, that's going to tarnish the reputation of any other future consultant. And so that's a really great point, though. You might be coming in at a place where, everybody's already hating you before they even meet you. And you just hear the word consultant, and they're like, oh, Jesus, not again. So something that I like to do, this is something I'm curious to get your thoughts here, just interviews. I just like to do interviews. Just talk to everybody. What's going on here? What happened? What broke? Why are we here? How can we help? That kind of stuff. Because what you find is a lot of those people, like I said, like for me personally, on the other side of this, like I could tell you everything that's wrong, and I could tell you every single thing that we've tried that didn't work. I could tell you why it didn't work. You got some different ideas. It's great, but talking to those people that work there, saying like, I'm going to be your ally. Like, oh yeah, that sounds terrible. How can I help you? I'm not here to fix it. I'm not here to save the day. I'm here to help you as a consultant rise, all boats rise. So, or the tide rises, all ships, right? So that's the kind of thing that I always like to do. And I'm curious the tactics for that, like building that kind of trust when you come in, especially starting from that negative, like you said.
There's a thing in storytelling, right? Jeff White has this great storytelling, these 3 steps, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them, right? So it's kind of being extremely proactive and letting the client know that what you're doing and why you've done something, right? All goes back to storytelling, and I think that makes a huge difference. I'll tell you a mistake I made with one of the stakeholders when I was interviewing them. I figured we have already done some discussions and we have some project background, so I just jumped right into interview and started asking questions. The stakeholder just was like, "Whoa, hold on! Like, what is the purpose of this interview? Why are we doing this?" Right? I was like, "Oh, that's a good question. I should have kind of stepped back and given it the context and all that." So it seems minor, but things that you would take for granted as a designer is like, "Oh, everyone knows what a responsive page is, or everyone knows." Just assuming that everyone knows what a CTA is, or just minor things. Just being extremely, like I would say, overly explanatory about some of these things goes a long way. Because then that you're like, hey, you're not just throwing jargon at me, and you're not just taking me along for a process that I have no idea what's going on. We as designers kind of assume that, hey, this is the process, this is how it works. But our stakeholders don't necessarily know that. They don't know what the good design process looks like. They probably don't know what constitutes like a good design review or what's a good wireframe, right? So us bringing them along in that process, I think really holding their hands and bringing them along in that process goes a long way to building that trust.
That's a good reminder in general. Whether you're an individual contributor working with stakeholders or full-time employee or a consultant coming on. But I think that's something else too. And what's interesting is, a lot of times consultants have that reputation of being just like, whatever, we're going to come in, we're going to throw some stuff and then we're going to leave and good luck implementing our solutions that we came up with. And I think coming in and those initial steps, and throwing around the buzzwords, the jargon, all that stuff like that, it erodes trust because they're just like, who the hell are you? I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, get out of here. Stop bothering me. I think that's something really important to keep in mind, especially when you're a random person that, like, a lot of times in these big companies, those stakeholders are not the ones who made the decision to hire you.
Exactly.
That's somebody else. That was like an executive up the chain who decided to hire, Focus Labs or Deloitte or whoever. And, that stakeholder's got to work with you now, had no say, most likely.
Okay.
And so, depending on the size of the company, obviously, bigger the company, probably the less likely they actually decided that. And so they might, it's funny, they might have actually had another company they preferred working with and like they lost out, And so you got to approach those relationships like in a very like soft way, and get as much insight as you can. Something else that I like to do is, when I talk to, I find an ally inside, somebody. And this is true, again, for consultant or even individual contributor trying to influence a team. Find an ally, somebody that agrees with you, that's like your champion on the inside. And then getting them to kind of help evangelize for your work and your team. And then, hey, who else can I talk to? And then ask like tips, like what should I know anything before I talk to them? Like, was there something like touchy? Like, oh yeah, they like really hated this idea and blah, blah, blah. And they're totally again, getting that like little intel, before you go and just randomly reach out and then you're blindsided, but like, they're like, I have no time for you. I don't want to talk to you. Things like that. I don't know. You ever experienced that kind of stuff? I'm sure you probably have. You've been in consulting for a while.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really great point. And I'm so glad that you brought it up. Like the buyer that brings you in for that consulting engagement, you're right. They might have, some of the other people might have lost out to other consultants, or they might not have the influence, right? So you're not just, like when you come in, you're building influence maybe with the team that's executing, but you also need to build influence with the team outside of it. Right. So what are the outside stakeholders and like bring them along? That's huge. And allies is so crucial. Like, and especially like going back to the point of, software is easy, people are hard. Getting that type of intel from these people. Oh, this person hates meetings on a Tuesday afternoon, something like that. Just making up a random example, but like, just getting like the little quirks and the personalities and like understanding things about people goes a long way, because getting to know those people and being proactive about it, it gives you a shortcut to build that trust, right? Because you're like, hey, I kind of know like this intel about this person. I can use that to my advantage and get to building that trust faster and making that impact faster. So that is an amazing point that you brought up, like finding those allies, finding people that are able to give you intel on the people on the inside is huge.
Every once in a while, I have a good insight, so that's good. But yeah, it helps. You mentioned this. Just like I want to like highlight this again. It takes a long time to build trust, but it's instant. You can instantly break it. And if you can find those allies that warn you ahead of time, you're going to avoid all those not all of them, because you never know, but you're going to avoid many of those opportunities where you're going to break. Opportunity is the wrong word. Many of those instances where you might break that without knowing, because you're just, how would you know? You're coming in from the outside. So I want to talk a little bit, like flip it around a little bit and think about this from the case of the individual contributor and the full-time employees who are working with consultants. So I'm making this statistic up, but I'm willing to bet there are much more individual contributors in the world than there are consultants. And so if you're out there listening and you have a job, the chances are very good you're an individual contributor and less likely to be a consultant. And so as an individual contributor, especially like junior designers and stuff like that, what advice would you have for how individual contributors can best work with a consultant to get the most out of that time that they have? Because that time is limited and it's not always, an indefinite ongoing thing.
And that's a great question. I think the thing the consultant does best, and the reason why people bring in consultants is that they're able to, circumvent a lot of the politics, the red tape, the bureaucracy, and just deliver, right? They're coming in. You might have beef with this product manager and like they have like this history and on this product, but we don't care about any of that. We're here to deliver software, working software, and make a business impact, right? What I would say for IC designers is you can almost think of a consultant as if you're familiar with Formula One racing, like you could think of like the lead car. There's a concept called slipstream. So what happens is a lead car punches a hole in the air in front of them. So that what that does is it makes the cars behind not have that air resistance. So the cars behind can get behind the lead car and actually go faster. So what that slipstream allows you to go faster, right?
I love this analogy.
You can almost imagine like the lead car as being the consultant. They're punching a hole in the air in front, which is the politics, the red tape, and the bureaucracy. And if the ICs can get behind the consultant and kind of learn from them and see, hey, I have a chance to make an impact based on the consultant's work, you can do a lot of impact in the wake of a consultant. So instead of seeing them as a threat and seeing them, hey, what, is my job in danger and whatnot, look for opportunities. I would say, look for how can I use the speed at which the consultants are moving to better my career.
I love that analogy. That is a really great analogy because one of the things that I was going to mention, and this is, I had this idea and I don't think I wrote it down and then I just forgot to say it. But, one of the things that I think is like a consultant when you come in, you are often seen as the expert. We hired you. It's sort of like the inverse of that feeling that I felt when, as an individual contributor, when I'm like, why are you hiding Deloitte? Whatever. But when Deloitte walks in, everybody's like, oh, it's Deloitte, and they're like, oh my God, whatever Deloitte says, we're going to do. And it doesn't matter if we tried it or not. That kind of stuff. Like, I think that's exactly the kind of stuff you're talking about. And you can use that to your advantage. You go along with them and you say, oh, well, the consultants agreed that blah, 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 blah. And then you're more likely to kind of get in there even long after those people are gone. And I think that's a really great analogy, man. The slipstream. You need to put that on a mug. Something that you mentioned previously in our call, and I want to get you to talk a little bit about this as a consultant. A lot of times, you are coming in to do a project, but sometimes you're actually hired to improve processes. You're hired to optimize, design ops or something like that. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. Is that something that you've experienced, like kind of coming in and instead of just delivering something, it's actually improving processes and how everybody actually works?
So it's interesting. Like I don't see a difference in the two in terms of delivering work and improving process. Like I think they're tightly coupled because you cannot do good work without good process. The challenge sometimes is that it's easier to deliver work than it is to improve process because improving process obviously takes a lot more effort, a lot more energy. So we kind of do both. So we come in and we don't try to completely disrupt the client and we say, hey, your process sucks. We're going to throw everything out the window. We actually come in and see. I mean, the first step in any problem, whether it's consulting, design, whatnot, is understanding, right? So we get a lay of land. We understand what's happening. But for us, delivery is always key. It's always paramount, right? So we always make sure we're delivering because we want to show that change. Whether the process comes along or not is variable, I would say. But ideally, yes, we want to upscale the client. We want to change the process. We want to make it better. Again, it goes back to deprecating ourselves. So once we roll off the project, we want them to be able to continue to deliver those changes and that process, right? And you can't do that without having that process. But process is something I think, in my experience at least, is highly variable. And the answer there is it depends. But making it impact, delivering software is the primary goal.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point, right? You can't build great software with a broken process, And so you've got to sort of like fix that. That's interesting because, yeah, I mean, it's funny because a lot of these, I'm just thinking through that. It was maybe a weird, silly question because a lot of these companies, they often assume that their processes are totally fine. Very few leaders have this sort of, what's the right word? Have this sort of insight and willing to admit that their processes and their ops are like totally broken. Yep. And so, often you come in, you're going to see like, oh, this is why you couldn't do this thing in-house. This is why you couldn't complete this project. And then as the consultant, you're like, oh, the savior, coming in to save the day. I think that's something that a lot of people probably don't realize that that's even happening. So anyway, I love that analogy. So I want to change it up a little bit and talk about career growth and how being a consultant is beneficial for your career versus something like an individual contributor working at a company for some longer period of time. Talk to me a little bit about, like, from your perspective, benefits you've seen from being a consultant versus maybe something like an
Yeah.
IC.
I think the biggest benefit is the range of problems that you see as a consultant. As an IC, I've worked in IC for a number of years, and the problem space is generally the same, right? You might have some changes in the problem space, but generally you understand the business, you understand the context, and you're delivering with kind of the same teams. What consulting allows you to do is to get experience across like a range of industries, a range of teams, and a range of problems. Like you would see, and again, it goes back to software is easy, people are hard kind of thing. Like, you just go into like these different, it keeps you on your toes. You're solving new problems all the time. And that keeps you fresh. I would say it's like very hard to become stale or become complacent as a consultant because you're always looking to, hey, what's the next new thing out there? Because you're seen as the expert, so you need to be on top of your game and you're on top of your knowledge. So you're always upscaling yourself so that you can upscale your clients. So I would say that is, at least for me, that's how I always saw consulting as an advantage. But I think the other thing that I see nowadays, like the UX industry or the product industry in general has been decimated by layoffs, right? And a lot of the conversation that I've been seeing is how do we as designers prove our value beyond just design or beyond just pixel pushing or beyond just like the day-to-day activities that we do? Like, what is the business value of design? Like, how do we demonstrate our value beyond just what design has been usually thought of? That that cliche of seat at the table, like we have that, like for the most part, right? I think the conversation now is what else can designers do to stand out from the crowd and prove that value? And I think consulting is it, because consulting gives you, in addition to being a designer, you're also learning, I would say, universally applicable skills. So you're learning influence, you're learning building trust, you're learning presentation, you're learning business value, like all of these things. So I would say one of the designer's biggest jobs is to be able to influence and show the art of the possible and show teams how that's possible, right? And consulting gives you that toolbox to be able to articulate that vision and articulate your value. For me, it used to be that, oh, you get all this experience working as a consultant. But lately, I've been thinking, all of these other soft skills that consulting gives you is almost a superpower that's going to really supercharge your career as a designer.
Totally agree. I 100% agree. And that's something too, one of the things that I always like to say is, and this is, again, goes back to the whole theme of the show, right? Beyond UX design. And I say, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX than design. And the stuff that I think about is, I love this Antoine de Saint-Exupéry quote about building a boat. And if you want to build a ship, you don't bark out orders, find people, you teach them to long for the vast and endless sea. And, this is something that it's maybe easier said than done, obviously. And I think as a consultant, though, when you're hired to come in and save the day and teach the people to long for the vast and endless sea, you have a platform. And you can kind of come in and you can do that a lot easier, I think, than sort of those individual contributors can. And so the point here is that as an individual contributor, you should be trying to do that, but it's often very hard. And you're coming against like walls and roadblocks and people who just don't agree with you. And especially if you're a junior designer and you have no real authority, how do you influence that team? On the other hand, a consultant's hired to do just that, and so you're coming in with that platform and a soapbox in a sense. And so you're able to do that. And, you're not constantly being like torn down, worn down. And I think it's a little easier to kind of do that work, which I don't know. I appreciate that, I guess, is the point. Not to say, there's an unfair advantage or anything, but it's just sort of the nature of the work. So one of the things I'm curious about, actually, before we go into that, I just want to like highlight something, my own personal experience. I worked, like I said, giant corporate conglomerate for about almost 8 years, 7.5 years or so. And I didn't work on the exact same thing for 8 years, but it was all in the similar industry and stuff. And I often think back, early in my career, I worked at a startup doing consulting and we built a bunch of apps for different startups and stuff. And I got my hands on a bunch of different things. I had so much like a vast experience in many different industries that way. And then I got a job at a big corporate conglomerate. The pay was obviously better than the startup I worked at. The benefits were good. Unlimited PTO. That was very nice. But I also kind of worked on the same thing in the same industry. And I kind of felt 8 years later, I got really safe. I felt safe until I got laid off. But I felt kind of safe. And I felt Complacent.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. Sort of complacent. Like it was easy, not because I wasn't doing anything, but because I just knew the space so well. I wasn't really challenged anymore. It was sort of just like, whatever, another day and the same old thing. And I often wonder, like, had I moved, like, where would I be today? You know what I mean? I don't know. So just sort of, I don't know, kind of in my head, I'm kind of thinking for anybody out there, maybe take some advice from me. I think it's nice, you kind of, jump around, do different things, learn different things. And I think, like you said, you build up your repertoire and you get more experience, and that diverse experience allows you to come up with the next project with just even more ideas because you've seen a bunch of different ways to solve different problems, and you're not always kind of approaching it from the same angle every time. So I really like that. One of the things that I'm kind of curious about, as a designer, how do you get into consulting? Because I often think about consultants, I think, especially design consultants, they tend to be higher seniority. They tend to have more experience. They tend to be the experts. That's why we're hiring them to come in. We don't hire a junior designer consultant to have them not know what to do. So I'm curious, as a junior designer, how do you get that kind of consulting position when you might not have the experience to really be the authority?
Yeah. So I can only speak from personal experience. There might be better ways to do this. So for junior designers, I would say go for like a bigger company. Like you would go for the Publicis, Sapiens, the Accentures, the Cognizants. I mean, they have consulting practices, like large consulting practices. They have a good mix of junior and senior designers, and that would allow you to upskill pretty fast on the consulting side of things. The one thing I would be wary of on firms like that is to make sure that you're learning something, you're learning in your engagements and not getting, like, to your point, complacent and feeling safe. Because believe it or not, you can get that same feeling at one of those bigger consulting firms as well. Like you don't have to be in-house because once if you get into an engagement, like, the goal there is to increase the length of the contract, right, and to be engaged as long as possible. So it is very possible to get into an engagement where you're like, hey, I can just coast and just kind of chill. Like I know exactly what's going on this contract. So you almost feel like an IC. So that's one thing I would be wary of. But otherwise, yeah, it's harder to break into consulting for I would say smaller firms because I mean they don't have the manpower to or the resources to upskill the junior designers. So I would say for like use upskill as at like a large company, and then you move into more specialized boutique software shops where you can go in as a senior software design consultant. I would add the caveat though that if you are really good, your abilities, you are able to break into that. So there's always exceptions, but generally I would say start larger with larger firms and then kind of go into more boutique firms where you can really shine as a consultant.
Yeah, I think like for me, this is sort of something that I would maybe advise people against, and not to be gatekeeper or anything, but I've seen a lot of junior designers that can't find jobs right now that are saying, well, I'm just going to go and try to get like consulting work or freelance work or whatever. And I know freelance and consulting aren't exactly the same. And the thing that I caution them against is when you're going to try to go solo like that at a small company where maybe you're the only designer, even not even just working for yourself. You're not learning the things, or maybe you're learning the wrong things, or maybe it takes you a really long time and you fail a whole lot and you stumble quite a bit before you actually learn things the right way. And so I'm not saying don't do it necessarily, but I am saying be very careful that you might end up, not being as better off a year from now as you may have thought. Unless you just need the paycheck. That's totally different, right? I mean, if you just need the money, that's totally different. But if you're thinking long-term career-wise, just be careful of that is all. I guess that's my sort of caveat there is just like, watch out because you never know. Getting a job just because you need a job is good and great. And sometimes people need that. But just be very aware of where that's going to get you a year from now, where you're going to end up.
That's very good. That's very good caveat.
All right. So Shahed, this has been a lot of fun, man. I got some questions that I'd like to ask all of my guests. Before we do that, though, anything else, any closing thoughts, anything we didn't get a chance to talk about that you'd like to have everybody out there listening know about consulting?
No, I think we pretty much covered most of it. If you have any other questions about consulting, you can reach out to me. I think my contact info should be on here. I'll be happy to continue chatting. Yeah, and speaking of consulting gigs, we are actually hiring at Focus Labs. So we are looking for a senior design consultant. So if you're interested,
awesome. Okay,
we're mostly focused at this point in Chicago and Denver, but we are open to remote roles as well. So if you're interested, please reach out to me.
All right, awesome, man. What kind of stuff would you guys be working on if anyone listening were to apply for this role? What kind of things might they expect? If you can say, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's we work across a diverse range of industries, and mostly on working software. So if you're interested in some of the technical details, we do pair programming, agile. Everyone says they do agile, but you know, uh, but it's cool. We have like a really awesome team of developers and designers, and they're all about executing fast and executing on client projects. So yeah, it's if you're looking for a place to really upskill fast, I would highly recommend Focus Labs.
All right, awesome, man. Well, we'll include all that stuff in the show notes, and yeah, we'll hopefully get you some people. Hopefully, it's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
Though. I don't know. I don't know how many people listen. So yeah, it might be 5, it might be 1,000, it might be 10,000. I don't know. Probably not 10,000. I don't think I get those numbers. That'd be nice though.
That would be awesome.
All right, so Shahed, I got a few questions. Like I said, I like to ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. You don't have to think too hard about any of these. First thing that comes to your mind is perfect. First up, what is your favorite non-design book?
Oof, non-design book. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction, just like self-improvement, not self-improvement. It's like business books.
Yeah.
So I'll just go with the first one that I'm that I'm reading right now. I'm reading the Personal MBA. It's been good. There's a lot of the sections on systems thinking and social aspect of it, like dealing with people, like how we talked about software easy, people are hard. Like there's a lot of stuff in there that's just like a good unlock in how you deal with business people and the processes.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm big on like the nonfiction stuff myself. I don't know. I just like I don't know. I wish I had time to read more like fiction and stuff.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of value in fiction, but I don't know. I just with kids and stuff. I don't know. You got 3. I don't know where you find time to even read anything, let alone books.
The good thing is that chapters are really short, so it takes you like about less than 5 minutes to read each, which is nice.
There you go. Yeah, that's why I like O'Reilly books, because every chapter has a summary at the end.
Yeah,
I can just skim through it. Except for Tom Griever, Articulate Design Center. Totally read your book, Tom. All right. What is your favorite non-design podcast?
Non-design podcast. I would say The Unscheduled CEO by Jonathan Courtney. It's funny. He just rambles on and on for like 2 hours. Like it just, but there's a lot of good insights and nuggets about how to run a business that I think is really valuable. You get like you get inside of a mind of a CEO and how they think about running like $1 billion business, which is kind of nice to see.
I love it. Yeah, those are cool, especially like for people like who have no insight into that. Podcasts like that, a great way. Like I don't know, 5-10 years ago, I don't know how you would have ever gotten that information. Like maybe a blog article, maybe like the Wall Street Journal or something. But I love this. Just the interesting kind of insights that you can get from those podcasts nowadays. All right, what is your favorite meal? This could be something you cook, something your grandma used to cook, something you had at a restaurant. Favorite meal?
Oof, that's a tough one. I had puri halwa at my mom's place the other night, so I'm going to go with that. It's just like these circular flatbreads that are deep fried with chickpeas and potatoes and all that. Just very good comfort food.
I've never heard of that before. What nationality is that?
It's Indian. It's Indian or
Indian,
Pakistani,
okay.
you could say, yeah.
Okay, what is it called again?
Called halwa puri.
Okay, yeah, I've never heard of that before. It's funny because, like, as an American white dude, I don't know, like Indian food. The only Indian food I'm really familiar with is like the stuff you get at like the local Indian restaurant, and a lot of that, it's because I used to work with a lot of Indians, and the broad range and depth of Indian food. I mean, there's so many different cultures and subcultures, and the food is like just so unique in every little part of India. But when you go to Indian food, it's just like curry, like that one thing, tikka masala or something, and so you don't really get the experience.
Yeah, it's funny because India is kind of like 35 different countries, if you think about it.
Right.
So it's,
Exactly. Well, it's funny. It's just like, American, you go to like, I don't know, Europe or something. What's an American restaurant? Like hot dogs? I mean, that's like, doesn't cover, just American food. There's so many different sub things. It's just funny. We do that with Indian, and Chinese is the same, it's.
Anyway. That's funny.
All right. Let's see. What's up next? What's your favorite vacation spot?
Ooh, I would say St. John's in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Yeah, it's
right on.
Like you can only get there by ferry, which is nice. That just reduces a lot of the number of people that can actually go there. So I like seclusion, privacy, and obviously beautiful views by the beach. So nice place.
Oh, that's nice, dude. And I guess you don't need like a passport since it's like U.S.
Yes,
territory.
that's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah, passport needed.
I love that. Makes it a little bit easier. All right. What is your favorite design tool that is not Figma?
I would say I got this remarkable too, which is the
Oh, right
white
on.
the white paper sketch pad, and it's been nice because there's no internet connection on it. I mean, it's still not as smooth or I'd say as instant as just pen and paper, but I just love sketching on it, just ideas, whatnot. It's been great as a thinking tool.
Yeah, I love that. I actually, I thought about getting one of those recently, and I don't know, I ended up not just for, I don't know why. But I love that. Does it like connect? Can you download stuff to like your computer and save it as like a note file or something? You said it doesn't connect to the internet, but
Yeah. Actually, yeah, that was a lie. Yeah, it does connect to the internet, but like it's very deliberate in the limited connectivity, which I appreciate.
oh, you can't like browse the internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't get like sidetracked by LinkedIn or something.
Yeah, it's like no notifications because I mean, the moment you jump on a computer or phone, you're just bombarded with notifications. So this is nice
dude,
to just the mental spaces, just pure sketching, which is nice.
That's really cool. I love that. All right. Well, that is it. That's all I've got. Shahed, before we get out of here, man, why don't you give yourself a plug? Let everybody know where they can find you, follow you online, and all that stuff.
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. And I also registered this domain name, which is a surprise is available. It's called money.design. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it. I'm probably going to do a newsletter or whatnot. So just watch out for that space. I might do something interesting.
All right. Yeah, check out money.design. Now, I'm surprised that was actually available. That's funny.
Yeah.
Design.money. Maybe that one's available too. You can get that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I won't buy it. Cool. All right, Shahed. So we'll link to all your stuff in the show notes as well, and we'll put a link. If you get a link for that job rec, send it over, and I'm happy to promote that for you too. Try to get you guys a little bit. Although I have been hearing recently on like places like LinkedIn where they kind of regret publicly sharing this stuff because they got like so many applicants. You might be taking on a lot more work than you're expecting. So I don't know. I hope you're okay with that. So Shahed, this has been fantastic, man. Thanks a lot. I think a lot of people are going to learn a ton about consulting. And like I said, I think this is something a lot of people probably haven't necessarily considered before as a career option for their design career. And so I'm excited to share that and all that stuff with everybody listening. So thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. And I learned a ton too from just this chat. So really appreciate you having me on. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
All right, glad to hear that. Thank you very much. Well, all right, y'all, that's it for Shahed and me for today. I hope we helped to shed a little bit of light on consulting and what it actually means and how it's different from maybe contracting or freelancing. But I'm curious, anybody out there listening, have you been doing consulting? Were you a consultant in a past life, in a former life? What was your experience? How'd you like it? Did you feel like you learned a lot? Let me know what you think on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if you like what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would love it if you left a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than you know. And if you know somebody who might find any of this stuff useful, then why don't you tell them about it? That would be fantastic. Help keep the show independent and ad-free. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/support to find out how. You can join Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free. And you'll get rough transcripts and exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, even episodes before they're released. And you can get instant access to that video archive right now for as little as $5 a month. And if you've been sitting on building your website, Wix Studio can help get you there faster. Wix Studio is a powerful platform that lets you create and manage websites easily. And with Wix Studio, you can quickly adapt designs for every device, reuse assets, and my favorite, export from Figma and much more. Check out beyonduxdesign.com/Wix to start creating today. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Beyond UX Design, Master Your Crafts Beyond Pixels and Prototypes. Unlock the secrets of UX success and learn all the things they didn't teach you in school. Use the promo code LISTENER for 10% off your copy. Just head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/book and pick up your copy today. Remember, sign up for the newsletter and check out all the past episodes along with all the show notes at beyonduxdesign.com. I hope you keep coming back for more great UX tips from Beyond UX Design. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all. my job. No, I appreciate that, dude. I say that's my job. I'd have to get paid for this to be my job. That's what I'm here for.